Hello, my name is Charlie Richard. I'm a professor of music here at Riverside City College Coyle School for the Arts. It has been our great pleasure to work with America's foremost concert saxophonist, Harvey Pittel, and recording the Fairling 48 Etudes plus 12 by Marcel Mule here at the concert hall. These etudes are an important part of the development and musical growth for saxophonists everywhere. And with the worldwide pandemic, this was an opportunity for us to get into the concert hall and record, preserve, and make available these important performances and thoughts and musical teachings by Maestro Pittel. And I'm so glad that we were able to do this. Maestro Pittel, welcome to the Coyle School of the Arts.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
It's been a pleasure to have you.
It's been a pleasure being here, and I'm very grateful that you created this opportunity.
Why do we study these etudes?
We studied these etudes in pursuit of the musical line. Why do we play the musical line? The musical line produces beautiful melodies which help lift the audience out of their daily problems. Credit card debt, family problems, school problems, whatever it is. The idea is to move the listener. That's what we're about, that's what I'm about when I play live. And I'm happy to say that my former students who are, luckily for me, now my dear friends and colleagues, do the same thing. We try to play with heart, with feeling. Once again, to move the listener. And to do this, one has to play the musical line, which produces beautiful melodies.
I know I had the opportunity to study these etudes with the maestro at the University of Texas, and they were transformative for me. And I'm very, very glad that we have this opportunity to preserve these and make them available for saxophonists everywhere. Did you study these etudes with a master teacher?
I studied these etudes with Joe Allard. When I was in the West Point Band during the Vietnam era, I had a chance to study with Joe. I started over again, actually, at that point. I was about 23 years old, and just started over with everything, all the pedagogy. And in addition, he taught me to really play the musical line. I had studied these with other teachers previously who were wonderfully helpful, but Joe Allard taught me how to play them and make music.
Do you still play these today?
I play a slow Fairlane at the beginning of every day as I warm up. I also play the fast Fairlanes just to try to make music and for technique.
So who was Franz Wilhelm Fairling?
He played in an opera orchestra. He was an oboist. He played in an opera orchestra for 45 years. That explains a lot I think, about these Fairlings. The melodies are just like opera singers sing, many of them, and the etudes with the faster tempo markings are very much like what he would have to play in the opera orchestra. I teach them more from a soloist's outlook, that they would be a concert piece for an audience, all by themselves, just that person playing the saxophone. But Fairling really worked hard to play in that opera orchestra for 45 years. He finally actually described why he was going to retire. It was hard work, but it explains something of the style of these Fairlanes.
Marcel Mule's influence on this edition is great. What was that, and who was he?
Well, I should say, first of all, around the turn of the century, a guy named Andro, A-N-D-R-A-U-D, took these Fairlane etudes and added his embellishments and ornaments and published an edition for oboe with those embellishments and ornaments. Along the way, many people have played these Fairlanes. Rose made 25 clarinet etudes of them. And then finally, Marcel Mule, who was the second professor of saxophone at the Paris Conservatory. It is my understanding the first professor of saxophone was Adolphe Sax, the inventor of the instrument. And then many years went by without a teacher there, and then Marcel Mule was the teacher. Marcel Mule taught many great classical saxophone players, and Marcel Mule actually I'm not sure that's the word, created the French school of classical saxophone playing. Marcel Mule's father was an amateur musician and taught Marcel Mule. And at one point, Marcel Mule went to Paris and listened to the great violinists and cellists and the great opera singers of the time. And from those sounds, he took the vibrato he used and the tone quality he used. So he sings, his old recordings sing on the saxophone, and his technique is unbelievably good. He was le maître, the master player, the master teacher. I had the pleasure of visiting with him in the early 1990s, and we made a video that is available online. You can find it, Harvey Pittel's visit with Le Maître Marcel Mule. And he talked about his career. And to me, the most important part of what he said was that he went to Paris and he listened to the great classical musicians, the violinists, the cellists, the singers, and others. I think that's what we as concert saxophonists need to do. It's fine to listen to one another, but we need to listen to the great artists of our time. It's Perlman, the violinist, certainly Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist. I mean, these are just two of maybe the most famous player. Josh Bell, the violinist. These are the people we need to listen to, the great opera singers, and decide how our instrument fits as a concert or classical instrument. So I think Marcel Mule really, for me, started the kind of saxophone style that I embody as a player, I hope.
You've made a career of bringing classical saxophone music to audiences throughout the world.
Yeah, I've tried. I've tried for many decades to do that. I'm not sure the musical public will ever recognize the saxophone as a classical instrument, because the word saxophone, at least here in the United States, and I think around the world, the word saxophone to most people means jazz. And the saxophone is a phenomenal jazz instrument. But Adolphe Sax, the inventor, had no idea it would become a jazz instrument. He had in mind that it would be a classical instrument to be played in the concert band of about 1846, and in front of that same concert band as a soloist, and within the symphony orchestra and in front of the symphony orchestra as a solo instrument. I've played with many major orchestras as a soloist, and it's always a great pleasure. And I played with many wind bands as a soloist. And I've played in the same ensembles as well. So it's a great way to go. And this is, I think, my wife's a cellist, so I think maybe the cello is my favorite instrument. But next to that, the saxophone is the king and queen of all the instruments, because we can do it all. It is a phenomenal instrument. And I hope that the musical public in decades to come will become aware of the saxophone as a classical instrument. I think the musical public knows the saxophone as a jazz instrument. So I hope that that same musical public can see the other side of that coin as well.
I think not only have you performed with so many great orchestras and bands as a soloist, but you've also been quite entrepreneurial. And there's the Harvey Pittel Saxophone Quartet that I can't imagine how many performances that ensemble's performed. How does that happen?
How does that happen? I had a dream to become a classical saxophonist when I was about 16. I heard the Marcel Mule Saxophone Quartet. I heard a recording. They were playing a Beethoven string quartet. It was unbelievable, unbelievably good. And it was my dream here in Los Angeles. I grew up here in Los Angeles. It was my dream to become a classical saxophonist. I was advised not to follow that dream on many occasions, but I had to do it. So I sought out the best graduate school to go to. I was a student at USC, which was a fabulous place to be a music major. We have many great music schools now, we really do. Anyway, I followed that dream and just kept working very hard, and finally my former students became my friends and we formed a saxophone quartet. And the first one that we had the saxophone quartet of the West Point Band, the West Point Military Academy Band. That was the first one, maybe. As members of the band, we were stationed at the West Point Military Academy. We weren't cadets there. The band is made up of professional musicians. And we toured quite a bit with that saxophone quartet and played concerts. And then I came back to Los Angeles here, along with Mark Waters, who's a former student of mine, is a baritone saxophonist, and Roger Greenberg, who got his master's degree with me when I taught at USC for a time, 9 years. And Jim Rudder, another former student of mine from Cal State Fullerton and USC. We got together and formed the Los Angeles Saxophone Quartet. That was the early 70s, a name which I still own legally. And we now have the Los Angeles Saxophone Quartet once again, with Professor Charles Richard as the baritone saxophonist, and the same tenor saxophonist, Roger Greenberg, who has had a very illustrious career as a classical saxophonist and professor of saxophone, and Dr. Jeff Benedict, another former student who also teaches here at Riverside Community College. The business of having a saxophone quartet, a professional quartet, and going out on the road is quite complex and was pretty taxing for a number of years. But we did bring, I think, great music, both popular music and classical music, to audiences across North America. And let's see, we were in Portugal, and we were in many places. We think we played about 1,500 concerts. The original saxophone quartet, there were many iterations of the quartet. I was the only one on the road for many decades. And, here I am.
Well, we've been so pleased. We are so pleased that you're able to share your time and your artistry with us, and I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to hearing these fantastic recordings. Thank you again.
Thank you. Aren't you going to ask me that last question? I have an answer now.
Who is Harvey Pittel?
Harvey Pittel is one of the luckiest men on earth to be able to follow his dream and reach this advanced age.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you very much.